You are now listening to Conscientization 101, an online magazine combining reflection, music, and action through independent media.
It's very important to be with conscious African women and men. And I'm very excited to see Conscientization 101, to see Sister Zari there and the brother James, and to see that you have started an organization to conscientize the world, especially African people, about what's really going on in this world.
Conscientization 101.
A lot of these people right now in this conscious, so-called conscious movement, they're not actually living in that lifestyle.
Fakers.
That's why, obviously yourself, we're on the same sort of frequency. That's why you're listening to the same things I'm listening to, because we're sharing that same sort of thought. We want the same sort of things, and a lot of people don't want the same sort of things. Even yourself, what you're doing now is for the people. So everything is people-based.
Globally conscientizing.
What's making me proud of what this kind of connection here is that, no matter what is said, no matter what is done, you leave listening to our music with a feeling. The same way we're going to leave this conversation with a feeling. And that is the most important thing for I and I, the vibe and the energy and the feeling that you leave with, because you might not remember every lyric, but you're going to remember the feeling. So that's really important, and that's what I'm getting from what you're doing.
Are you a mirage?
Yes, I am. But golden orange isn't.
All right, welcome all to another edition of Conscientization 101 podcast. Yes, I'm your host, James Stone, and I will be riding solo today on this episode. And this episode is a very special episode. This episode is part one of a three-part series. That's right. It is part one of a three-part series. This episode, we will be speaking with Dr. Julian Kunnie of the University of Arizona about his book, The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People. For those of you who are subscribers to the podcast, y'all already probably familiar with Julian because he's a frequent guest here on the C101 podcast. Our first dialogue we had with him was centered around his book, Is Apartheid Really Dead? Pan-Africanist Working Class Cultural Critical Perspectives. And that was a two-part dialogue, you know what I'm saying? Those were episodes 9 and 10. Then we had a roundtable discussion with our main man down in Austin, UT, Dr. Joao Costa Vargas, and that was episode 18, okay? So basically what I'm trying to tell y'all is that we've had him on the show before, so we're not even gonna run down his vitae. We're gonna get directly into the show about his new book. And if you haven't heard those episodes 9 and 10 and 18 with Julian on there, go back and listen to them. And I know it says, yes, and if you want to listen to the complete interview, go ahead and get a subscription. That is on the old podcast. Y'all know we got a store, so you can go to the store and get the unabridged interviews to all those previous podcasts, all those previous interviews, all those podcasts 1 through 20 that says, oh yeah, subscription, y'all know that's over with. Y'all can go back and listen to all that audio unabridged in our store. And like you already know, that we play excerpts on the podcast, the full unabridged interview available in the store. So if you want to get familiar with Julian's work, go back and check out those podcast episodes. If you haven't, go to the store and listen to the complete unabridged interview, because you are in for a treat. And for those of you who already have, y'all already know this show's gonna be the bomb. All right, Now, let's get into today's show, shall we? Okay, so this interview is a 3-part series, okay? The complete interview, the unabridged interview that's available in the store is over 4 hours long. That's why we had to break it up into 3 parts. The interview took place over 2 days, December 12th, 2015, and January 23rd, 2016, okay? So we talk about a lot of good stuff in here. I don't want to waste the time talking about it, but I will read for you the blurb of Julian's book, okay? Let's do that now! The issues arising from rapid global integration have generally been treated in isolation by most academic works. This volume examines the many pitfalls of globalization from the perspective of impoverished and indigenous peoples, including the widening wealth gap, the struggle for restoration of dispossessed lands and cultural rights, global warming, and ecological annihilation, and the experiences of women in underdeveloped regions. The United States' growing prison industrial complex is discussed. The author concludes with a call for reassessing current ways of living and proposes recreating cultures of conservation and sustainable economies. All right, that's the blurb on the back of the book of The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People by Julian Kunnie. But even that blurb on the back of the book doesn't do complete justice to the content of this book, okay? He's breaking down a lot of stuff, and what he's also doing in the book is showing the interconnectedness of the whole economy, because a lot of people like to focus on issues, right? And issues always lead to reform. Here's the thing, issues don't appear in isolation. They're all connected. So when you see that the police state of a settler colonial, I don't know, I'm just pulling this out of my head, of a settler colonial empire such as, I don't know, the United States, start shooting Africans in the street, but you didn't understand why they was killing Africans all over the world, in Haiti and Africa and South America. And you say, oh, what is this? Oh my God, my life matters. You have to understand this is a policy of the state. This is a policy of interconnectedness, and you as a colonized African internal colony. That's right. But you got to make these connections, and that's what this book does. That's what we do, make connections here on C101. So right now, I'm going to shut up. We're going to get into this 3-part series. This is part 1 with Dr. Julian Kunnie, The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People. This is part 1. These are only excerpts. We're going to let you know how to get the whole damn series at the end. Let's get into the interview right now! All right, we are here with frequent Conscientization 101 guest, Dr. Julian Kunnie. How you doing, Julian?
Hotep, doing very well. Sister Zari, Brother James, good to be back on with you all.
And we are here to talk about your book, The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People. We're going to go ahead and jump right in because we got a lot to talk about because you covered a lot in this phenomenal book. So let's just get into it right now, shall we? So we want to start to talk about your book, again, The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People. One of the things you do phenomenally well in this book, you talk about many topics that people perceive to be like unrelated, such as like monopoly capital, Eurocentric epistemology, menocide, sexism, class privilege, cultural imperialism, and militarism, just to name like a few, you know? And one of the things people always do is like, oh, I got to figure out which one of these to attack, and then that's my mission in life. but what you do in your book is you pull all of these social issues together and place them within the framework of globalization. You know, you posit that the problems caused by globalization cannot be solved within the current political economy, which is echoed in a quote you cited from Nikita Khrushchev when he said, politicians are the same all over. They promise to build bridges even when there are no rivers. Okay, I think that's very telling. You know, with this in mind, we want you to just open up and talk about the premise of the book for the listening audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the globalization is the current system under which we live. And originally, in fact, one of the title options I looked at was globalization and recolonization of the world. Essentially, I'm arguing that, not arguing, stating, declaring that the world in which we live has never been decolonized.
That's right.
In other words, ever since we had so-called Europe, which is an ideological construction.
That's
Europe
right, yes.
is an ideological construction. Ever since we've had this notion of, quote, Western Europe, or, quote, Western civilization, which is a system that's been operative over the past 5 to 6 centuries. Following the aftermath of feudalism in places like Britain, Germany, France, and so forth. Then we had slavery. We had the system within Europe, within those countries, within those places, so-called Europe, which were self-destroyed because they had no resources. Culturally, they were destructive of the ecology. You can read a lot about this in Kirkpatrick Sale's classic book, The Conquest of Paradise. And they were engaged in perpetual wars. Perpetual wars destroying each other. Weapons of mass destruction really started off in this feudal slave period, colonial period within so-called Europe. And so they specialized in the art of warfare and self-destruction and destruction of the ecology, destroyed the forest, destroyed the wolves, birds, the water, because all they could do, they didn't understand their relationship with the natural world. And so the feudal aristocracy took advantage of that whole situation and then began these systems of, privatization of land and so forth and so on that we see existing today. And then, of course, you had slavery, in which these countries, which became imperialist countries, went about into Africa, since they had been trading with Africa, and began to start this nefarious trade in human beings for profit, for monopoly profit. And so you look at the development of that whole system, and then you have colonization of the world, where they were deciding about how this entire planet, this Mother Earth, would be apportioned among the French, the British, the Germans, the Belgians, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and so forth, Italians, and so on. So that whole system has never been fundamentally abolished, right? It continues to exist in our world today. In the stock market, centered, in New York or London or Paris and so on, right?
Right.
And so when you look at this whole system, the system of genocide, of slavery, of colonization, of ecocide, of extinction, sexism, class privilege, cultural imperialism, militarism, the prison industrial complex, monopoly capital, and of course, capitalism is at the key of it. It is a European engineered system like genetically modified food, right? So it's a European engineered system for the monopoly on the surplus, what they call the surplus value from production of labor. Marx, who is also European, and
Yes.
of course, since he is European, he knows the system in Europe
He knew the system best because he saw it firsthand when they were exploiting the children in Wales, in the mines. They put kids out there 10, 11 years old, enslaving them for profit. The same system enslaving people today in the United States in so-called sweatshops, farm laborers, exploiting people in the factories that used to be in Detroit, in the East, and steel mills, in Gary, Indiana, and what have you, all over. Just like the slave system of the South, cotton plantations, tobacco, and so on. Same system, capitalism, that developed from slavery and colonization, is the same system that we have today, existing in the world with cheap labor in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, places like Haiti, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and so on. The cost of globalization is the destruction of the cultures, the lands, the religions, the social prosperity, the families, the lives of the peoples of the world. Not only the peoples of the world today, but also the extinction. The extinction of the vast majority of living creatures. Plants, the trees, the birds, the insects, the four-leggeds, the fish, the creatures of the sea. So there is total annihilation. And this is what we have seen as the result of so-called Western civilization, Western globalization. The book brings all of this stuff together because it says that this is totally unsustainable. Like it says on the first page, this is the first time when human beings are really faced with the threat of possible self-extinction. We really are at that point. Global warming and climate change, which is also part of the book, which is now on an irreversible path. Annihilation of this world. They've already, the headlines in the New York Times, which is another distortion of reality, but because they give us a very skewed view as if the whole world is revolving around people greedy wanting to make money, and that's Wall Street and so forth. So just like the Wall Street Journal and all the other productions in the world, in this country and in the world. So when the scientists are saying this, in fact, 2015 unequivocally has been the hottest year on record.
Oh, yes.
Right? And we've never had this situation before. And so with that comes the melting glaciers, the rising of the oceans, the drought, the pictures of drought, they had pictures of dams dried up in southern Africa. You got rivers no longer with water. You got these extreme conditions of the El Nino phenomenon because of the warming of the Pacific and so on. And, warming of the oceans, extreme conditions like, you have the storms and snow, 2-3 feet of snow in the east and so on right now. So we've seen a total disruption, destabilization of the entire natural world and the ecology. It all redounds to the same system that started in so-called Europe, where they destroyed whatever ecology they had. They destroyed the cultures of the people, and then they brought in Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, where there was a marriage, unholy alliance, people in bed between the state, the aristocracy, the feudal monarchy, and the church, the papacy, right? Mm-hmm. So you look at all this stuff. It's part of the same thing. It's part of the same thing. And today, what they want the world to do, like the people in China, is to salivate to join the system.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Right? They want us to join the system so that we can also become active participants in the destruction of our own people and our cultures and our children. Oh. It's like we talked earlier, before we got on about higher education, the engine of inequality, referring to that issue in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Higher in cost, higher in destruction. higher in indebtedness. $1.2 trillion of student debt in the United States for going to college? Unbelievable. Hello. You know, this is the same. And then we look at the land of the free, home of the brave. As Vine Deloria used to say, you got to be really, really brave to live in the land of the free.
That's right.
That's true.
Right? Because the system imprisons 25% of people who are in prison in the world. The United States, with 5% of the world's people, has 25% of the world's incarcerated community. And I have been in those prisons, those dungeons of hell. As Mumia Abu Jamal said to me when I visited him while he was on death row in Pennsylvania, welcome to hell. Hell on earth. Okay? There's, almost 3 million people in prison, and then there's at least another 10 million, 15 million people inevitably, involved in some level with, quote, criminal justice. And in terms of black people, the African community in this country, it's like 1/3 have had some situation of being involved with, quote, law enforcement. So the criminal justice system is, in fact, criminal. Criminal is the adjective of the justice system.
It sure is.
So it's the same system that we're dealing with. In terms of women, I mean, those statistics were outrageous. I think it was in 1980, they said there were like 15,000 women in prison. Today, there's over 180,000 women.
Man.
And of course, African women in this country,
Yeah.
largest population, like 800% in terms of growth. And so you're talking about taking women away as mothers. You're talking about women giving birth in shackles in a hospital and not being able to bond with their babies. No, in the land of the free, home of the brave, the beacon of civilization and progress, we have to ask the question, what is the cost of being a human being? What is the cost to the earth of which we are all born? What is the cost of this civilization, this whole system in which we're living today? Are we human beings? If we're human beings, were we meant to live like this?
Right.
Right? The birds know what they need to do. They don't go destroy each other. We have a lot of creatures here like bobcats and javelinas, wild pigs, beautiful hawks and eagles, coyotes and all kinds of wonderful creatures here in Arizona. Even bears and so on, and mountain lions and so on. They don't go destroying, creating war, destroying the land, destroying it, polluting the water.
No.
Poisoning the food with chemicals, injecting little hormones and mixing things up, using pesticides, destroy everything and kill the bees and so on. They don't do that. And human beings here are claiming that we're the most intelligent, so-called scientists, claiming that we're the pinnacle of nature.
It destroys its own, right?
And look at the wars.
Yeah.
Look at the wars. The United States spends more than the rest of the world put together on armaments. $1.2 trillion. 60 cents of every dollar in the United States that we pay in taxes goes into the military-industrial complex. And tell me, who is going to attack the United States? In their right mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Which country would attack the United States? The military-industrial complex is another pretext for profits. When you look at, these huge companies like Boeing, like Raytheon, like Hughes Aircraft, you know, and all of these military industrial contractors, okay, General Electric and so on, they get 100 to 200 billion dollar contracts to manufacture weapons of mass destruction. And those weapons of mass destruction are designed to kill people of color,
Yep.
indigenous peoples around the world, first and foremost, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Mali. The United States has 1,000 bases around the world. 1,000! For goodness sake. Our tax money's going in there.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the United States military uses 11 million gallons of gasoline every day.
Yeah.
11 million gallons.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It was in Reuters News last week. I was reading about that. 11
Day?
A day, yeah.
Yeah, a day.
Because
A
they
day.
always got a boat on
Hey,
a ship on the water, some kind of way, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the planes, these planes
And the
they
planes.
have a Swanton Air Force Base here, and these planes, and I called and complained to the base, and they said, you guys are disturbing my ability to live.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hear anything because those deafening roars, are just, and they fly really low over the university, reminding everybody who's boss.
Right.
So it's the same system. Militarism, the prison industrial complex, the violence against women, the rape of women, or assault or battery against a woman in this country every 30 seconds, right? In a country which has all these so-called constitutional provision about protecting women's rights. What protection do women have? What protection do children have when 8-year-old children are handcuffed by the police in schools, which also resemble prisons?
Yes.
Their gates and fences and so on. So when you look at this whole system, there is a cost. It's called globalization. And we're told, never before has the world made so much of money. They talk about China. They laud China. I've been in China many times. I taught in China. I visited around China. And it's a slave system.
Yeah.
It's a slave system. And now, China's taking that same system to Africa.
Yeah.
See, so you look at this whole system and the cost of globalization, is reflected when you talk about global capital. Oxfam just came out with the report. Here's a good one. The wealthiest 62 billionaires in the world own more than half of the world's human beings.
Human beings? I thought he was going to say
Hello.
resources.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yes.
think you were going to say human beings. Wow.
Yes. 3.5 billion people. World's 50% of the world's population.
Hey.
Has less in terms of value and earnings than the 62 wealthiest people in the world whose joint holdings are $1.6 trillion. Now that, in fact, over the past 5 years, it used to be 85, right? Now it's an even smaller number of billionaires from 2010. So over 2010 to 2015, you've seen the rapid acceleration of globalization, even, decimating even more the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
So this is the cost of globalization. This is why I wanted to put this book together and bring it all so that we understand that this, Bernie Sanders ain't going to solve the problem.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God, please. And
Bernie Sanders is a part of the system.
Yep.
It's the same white supremacist, colonial, capitalist, imperialist system. Is Bernie Sanders going to dismantle the United States imperialist military?
Yeah, right.
Is he going to say, okay, we're going to shut all corporations down and now, return the stolen land back to the Indians?
Yeah.
and restore the right of self-determination to African people in this country, so that if people want to go back to Africa, they have the absolute right. They will get reparations for slavery to be able to return to Africa to rebuild our ancestral motherland. Is he going to be doing that? Is he going to dismantle the prison industrial complex? You know?
Yeah.
No. He's not going to be doing that. He's going to give a good face to the capitalist system.
That's right.
To legitimate it. He wants benevolent capitalism.
Yeah.
And that's the way the system operates. It moves back and forth. You know, I'm reading this book right now, which is so interesting, about China. This is sort of an added bonus. It's called The Chinese Opium Wars. And it's so interesting when you look at that book, because it's talking about democracy. And, you know, it's talking about the British. So the whole war on drugs that we hear about, it's a great book. My colleague loaned me this book. I'm going to have to buy it from him. The Chinese Opium Wars. It's really interesting because it says right on the back, it says, by guile, bribery, and violence, the drug habit was so successfully implanted in China that by the middle of the century, opium was the largest single cash commodity in the world.
Wow.
That's the British for you.
Yep.
See, the Chinese government's efforts to stamp out the destructive, though highly profitable trade erupted in a series of minor wars with the West between 1830 and 1860, climaxed by the looting and burning of the Summer Palace, known as the Opium Wars. So when you look at this whole situation, one of the points of the book, they talk about democracy, and the guy says it doesn't matter. You know, you can expand the number of people who participate in these democratic processes, so long as you can slant their inclinations.
Yeah.
So you bring in more people into the system in terms of, quote, voting, right? But you basically control the way they think.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So-
From when they're
so-
born.
Yeah, exactly, from birth. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in terms of freedom, because you're only free to think within a certain box.
Yep.
That's right.
You know, you're brainwashed. And of course, the whole thing about drugs and the war on drugs that the West claims, the United States and Britain and all these people, Britain used its navy to carry opium. Okay? So that was how ruthless it is. That's the same ruthless system we have today in terms of the war of drugs by the West, because it's part of a, you know, between 600 billion and $1 trillion economy, as I said.
Yeah.
So I know I had a mouthful in this first response, but I just wanted to kind of start off with, you know, touching on why these issues are all intrinsically interwoven, so that people in the United States in general, and the African community in particular, and people of color alongside with our African community, would begin to understand how destructive the system is and how we have been duped. Like Malcolm X said, you know, they've pulled the wool over our eyes, you know, so that we think that the criminal is the victim and the victim is the criminal.
Yeah.
You know, so they have continued to intensify the aggression, the wars, conquests, the prisons, and the whole thing about free markets and more money and so forth. These myths, these ideologies, these fabrications, these lies, and so that we would buy in. We'd be constantly buying.
Yeah.
And buying into their lies.
Yeah.
That we think that whatever we read in school, learn in school, is reality. It has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with a falsified, globalized, colonized, Eurocentric, imperialist world that we are conditioned, brainwashed, coerced, beaten, brutalized, imprisoned into accepting as normal.
Every shot that thunders through the nighttime, don't you wonder what potential was extinguished to keep the flames burning under through the underworld and overworld? Principles are so the same, no, we pretend they're not as if they do not control cocaine. But you find it's connected. Every kid in the hood that's living with a death wish is the same as the king who kills full of bling, but he's just much more reckless. It's the king that I'm talking about, who's born with a silver spoon in his mouth, still gonna clap for the slightest to chat at any world leader that can't back it. If he's sitting on the boxes, they're just oil mineral deposits. Food he's moving, fucking with our profit, so he better stop it. They say money make the world go round, but it don't. That's just not true if you ain't got guns to protect that money. I regret that, sonny, it's more for you. Only murder, further agendas that money couldn't force. Eliminate the foes who propose to suppose a different course. Cause a little torture, usually a big supporter, though there's nothing quite like killing. Good riddance to non-supporters. We demonize the man on the corner, paint him as a thug. We worship murder so much, it's just that he ain't killed enough. You wanna commit murder and not end up in cuffs, you gotta make it to the Premier League. 1,000 whoever said that money makes the world go round, they just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Every knife to punch your lungs, the sons don't make you wonder, mums. If he was born to billionaires, backed by 100 guns, would he be living still, drinking, sleeping, eating meals instead of dead? Where it don't count, we expect you to be killed. Cause living as a pauper is a fate that's tainted, acquainted with torture. We ain't debating the rape of the daughter. If she was raised in particular borders, place the fate made particular slaughters. No fate, just particular orders. It's the way of the world, no accident. In fact, it's immaculate. Got a big gun, start clapping it. Cause the language of power devour quick. Any silly little pacifist or activist or challenges, brown or black skinned savages who inhabit in land with minerals in it. Think for a minute that the rhetoric we spoke hope was not meant to be a joke. Don't dream compassion will happen, it won't. Just go straight for the throat. Cause any nation or races that prove themselves incapable, matching modern murder machines make themselves enslavable. It is murder, not money we desire, insatiable. The thrilling of the killing is $1 million sensational. Yes, what we can't do with a bribe could be achieved in the breeze with a gun and a knife. Because only murder further agendas that money couldn't grind. Nothing like a couple dead kids to change a parent's mind. Whoever said that money makes the world go round, they just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Let's get a little clarity. You ain't got the capacity to internationally have a say in the way things happening. You expect to collect more batter in your arsenal, ain't got no nukes. Armies equipped with too few troops. We're laughing at you when you call truce. Part of the ritual to shoot. You got no background in colonization or public resource privatization. You can't bang with the big boys, face it. But you still wanna play like Satan. You got no death squads to call your own, or a pilot to fly your drones, much less bulldozers for their homes. Talk gangster, you wanna name Al Capone? He was an amateur. Silly little boys don't understand. Even he went jail for tax evasion, for missing a payment in a payment plan to the man. One with a visible hand and a hit if it's to enforce my plan. I am just because I can, more wicked than the summer of Sam. Kick your shit and I kick my fam. You bust your gun and I bomb your land. Only murder further agendas that money can't control. Nothing like a massacred village to get the problem solved. Whoever said that money makes the world go round, they just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They just didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe. Who said money makes the world go round? They didn't know murder runs the globe. Murder runs the globe.
And I want to make a quick response to that because I had something I wanted to add. We were on a little earlier, and right now, this and how pervasive this whole thing is. It's something called daylight savings time. So they even like the conception of time, right?
Yeah.
Because let's say if it's static where you're static where you're at, Julian, they don't do the daylight savings time. And if we were to call you after spring break, which is March down here in Texas, we're gonna go up 2 hours away from you. You see what I'm saying? So they control the whole social thing. So we call you after March, you're 2 hours ahead. They throw your whole social functioning off. And I just want to say something about. I want to tie this. I want you to comment on this, break this down, because this is not like we're just hitting all the points on the question, guys. You know how we do things on C101. I've been wanting to ask Julian this, especially like I went to Walgreens, listening to artists around the world. I don't know if y'all have Walgreens, Julian, but this is a store called Walgreens. Had to pick something up, and there's a magazine out right now. On the cover of it is Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump. And what's that fool name? Ben Carson.
Ben Carson.
And it says that Negro. It's called The Revolution. The New Revolutionaries. It's all right. It said the new revolution. Now, revolutions don't prop up or reform current systems. It's a complete and total transformation. But they just use these words. And I wanted to tie this into something Julian said in the beginning of the book. I just want you to break this down. It's a term people you need to be familiar with called menticide. You know, we first, Zara and myself first came in contact with this term when we looked at the work of Dr. Bobby Wright. Julian, you add to it, and I want you to break this down and kind of just tie down what you see and how we was talking about daylight saving time, how it's all encompassing, it's pervasive. When you say, on page 13 about menticide is a pervasive sense of social insouciance. I love that word. Political unconsciousness, and mimicking, get this, people, and mimicking of the superficial and cosmetic that pass easily for substantive and groundbreaking among the world's middle classes.
There you go.
Okay, now I want you to tie that together with how these imperialists control time and then have the nerve to have Ben Carson and and Bernie Sanders, Colonel Sanders, that's what I call him. He ain't got nothing new for the recipe. It ain't no new recipe. It's the same old KFC.
Sure.
Colonel Sanders, talk about this menticide and how they do this in these middle class and this insouciance. That word. Can you talk about that right quick before we move on to the next question?
I don't know what I was smoking when I wrote that. But it's really something because I need to see that magazine. By the way, do you remember which one it was?
I don't know. It's on the. If you go to I was in Walgreens. It's on the. It's
okay.
On the. They're on the cover. You see, they had it right at the checkout stand. It said, "I was so sick." It said the new revolutionaries.
Yeah. So it's about control, just like this whole daylight savings times thing. They want to. I mean, it's all. They tell you always, it's just like I was exercising one time in Colorado, and I was in a parking lot, and I was warming up for a jog, This is outside Applebee's. I don't go to Applebee's. I don't know. I'm with restaurants, period, anyway. But, and so I was warming up and so on. And then a guy comes, and the chef comes running out, the manager comes running out like 15 minutes later, and they said, "Oh, sir, is everything okay?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, we were kind of concerned that you were moving back and forth in the parking lot. And, we didn't want you to get hit by..." I said, "I'm an adult." But it's like the police stopping you on the road and saying, this is what you need to do to protect your safety.
Right.
Right? It's the same ideology. It's the same ideology when the policeman stops you and you have to immediately, come to attention.
Yeah, you
right?
got to
Otherwise, you
down.
could end up dead. You could end up dead, like the sister down in Sandra Blaine in Texas. Right? So it's all about control. They control the time. They control our connections. They control the internet. They control our very thought process of who we are as human beings. These images that we have of life, of sex, of love, of the earth, of the bees, the spiders, the insects, of other people, of people who speak differently. You know, you remember the woman who wouldn't get on the plane because she said that she heard somebody speaking Arabic, the passenger next to her, and they, took the guy off the plane or something like that. So you have this anti-Islamophobia. It's Islamophobia, sorry. Because the language of Arabic is associated with, quote, terrorism. But English is not associated with terrorism.
Exactly.
Right. That's refined.
That's refined. Yeah. You can kill people in English, massacre them, or bomb them, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But if you do it speaking Arabic, you're a terrorist. See, this is how they conjure images. The conjurer. In traditional African indigenous traditions, we had conjurers. The Africans who came from Africa were, into the Americas, had to figure out ways of dealing with slavery.
Yeah.
So had to conjure medicine, had to conjure ceremonies and so forth to survive the onslaught, the Holocaust of enslavement, genocide. So these guys today are doing the other conjuring. Trump. Now, I just saw something about Bloomberg considering a run.
Oh, God. Wow.
He says, well, don't worry, guys. I'll use my own money.
Right. So I'll be honest.
I don't need your money.
Right.
Political action committees.
I am the political action
Right,
committee.
exactly.
So, it's such a scandal. And because the United States human population is so colonized and so anesthetized and so brainwashed, indoctrinated, and so stupefied, just basically they've been sanitized to the point that they don't know whether they're living or whether they are zombies. They just they're not conscious of the reality around them. So when you see a dead person on the street, they say, well, it has nothing to do with me. So it's just part of life. So just like, instinctively going to Walmart or instinctively buying a new car or, just instinctively using your credit card. You just condition in that way. So your mental capacity to figure out things has been virtually destroyed.
That's true.
And that's what menticide is.
It's true.
It's like a lobotomization, removal of portions of your brain, so that you can no longer function as a normal human being. And they've worked very, very hard. This is why they're making so much money. The trillions of dollars, Wall Street and everything else, these corporations, the scientists, and, I was reading the other day that Pfizer or Pfizer, this health pharmaceutical corporation,
company,
made $140 billion in pre-tax profits. $140 billion. That's more than some of those oil companies.
Yeah, it is.
Pharmaceutical company. One pharmaceutical giant. Transnational. So when you look at this whole system and the drugs that they sell, right, have significant impact on our brain, on our blood, on our genetic constitution, on our hormones. They affect everything within our being. And so they're working on removing our possibility of thinking independently at all.
Right.
And so they've been very successful in that. They've been very successful in that. And so when this menticide, this insouciance, this insensitivity to life, this harshness, you see somebody, a child, starving, on the reservation or in Flint, right? Talk about it. Our people are suffering, And I know what's the response of the United States? 100,000 people, mostly black and poor. Flint, that was abandoned in the 70s and the 80s. Roger Moore did that film. What was that, Roger and Me, about, the closing up the plants and so on.
Yeah.
So decimation of Flint and the injecting of poison polluted water that contained lead into that community for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's children, there's pregnant women, there's people living there.
Mm-hmm.
That's insouciance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where's the middle classes from the United States going and saying that governor needs to be arrested? That whole system that allows that kind of extermination,
Mm-hmm.
whole community of people, of Africans
Mm-hmm.
in this country. Remember New Orleans?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No accident.
Mm-hmm.
So the levees, that were busted. And again, it's the same system, the insensitivity. Okay, the racism is also insouciance. When we see the way that people are tortured in prison, in solitary confinement, my goodness, some people have been there for 19 years in solitary confinement, where you have 1 hour each day where you can come out of a 24-hour dungeon down below in darkness. I mean, that's hell. How, what has somebody done to deserve that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Jamila Abdul Alamin, H.R. Brown, in solitary confinement, and being thrown into these maximum supermax prisons. That is the height of depravity, of human depravity. That means that the person's humanity, the person that's doing it, the person that's signing the laws or sentencing the person to something like that is inhuman.
Yeah.
See? So, and everybody participates in that inhumanity, not just the judge and the legal system, the prosecutor, because our taxes go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And we all benefit from it. Just like the war in Vietnam, when people were protesting against the Vietnam War, and Nixon said, hey, you know what you're protesting against? Our American way of life.
That's right. That's what people need to understand.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
this whole colonial system.
Yes.
They think it's something different and not collected. Like you talked about the dialectic between wealth. People think some kind of way there's not a dialectic between if these people are consolidating, integrating, and getting richer. Guess what the other half of that is? That relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reason why we have rich people in the world is because we have poor people.
Yeah.
This is the movie that is just as real, just as close, just as terrifying as being there.
All right, that's it. That's it for this episode. But you ain't got to worry, because you know what you got to do. You know you want to listen to the rest of it. So all you got to do, if you want to listen to part 1, and remember, this is a 3-part series now. Took place over 2 days. Last December 12th, 2015, 123, 2016, okay? But if you want to listen to Dr. Julian Kunnie, part 1 of The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and Its People dialogue, all you got to do, if you want to listen to it in its entirety, all you have to do is go to our store at shop.conscientization101.com. That is shop.conscientization.com. And there you will have access not only to this particular interview, but to all of C101's unabridged interviews, musical commentaries, and merchandise. And most importantly, you will be supporting 100% independent media. And remember, like I said before, Julian's other unabridged interviews are in there. The round table we did with Joao, The one where we talked about, is apartheid really dead? Pan-Africanist, working class, cultural critical perspectives. Now the podcast episode for these, for Julian's other interviews he did with us is 9, 10, and 18. But if you say, damn, I like what I heard just now, I want to go straight to the store and buy that shit. Go on over to the store, Unabridged Interviews. They are there. You can listen to the complete Unabridged Interviews. And remember, this is part 1. This Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and its People is part 1 of a 3-part series. It's over 4 hours long, okay? So we didn't even touch the tip of the iceberg, but you can, not to fret, you can get it, okay? You can go on to the store. Support 100% independent media. Now, this episode has featured sounds from Chairman Math, Blue Soup, from his album, Soup. Akala, Murder Runs the Globe, from his album, Knowledge is Power, Volume 2. And once again, coming from Chairman Mav's album, Soup, the track is Prawn Soup. That's actually what you're listening to right now. As always, the link to this music are always found in our show notes. The link to Julian's book is in the show notes. It's actually in the library, the C101 library. That's why you gotta visit the site. Look at the videos, look at the library. We have everything you need for your conscientization 101. Don't forget to check us out at Twitter at Conscien1. That's CONSCIEN1. That's CONSCIEN1. On Facebook at Conscientization 101 and Instagram at C101 Editors. Also, go to the site, conscientization101.com or C101magazine.com and sign up to our mailing list. That's where you can stay up to date with all of our latest news and commentaries and stuff like that. What we got in store for the people, okay? Again, we want to thank Julian for sitting down and dialoguing with us about his book. Again, the book is The Cost of Globalization, Dangers to the Earth and its People. Links in the description, in the library on conscientization101.com website. Tell the people about the podcast. Tell the people about the book. This is part 1. Part 2 is coming. It's the next episode. Obviously, 1, then 2, then 3. And guess what? Until then, go to Conscientization 101, go to the store, check it out, tell a friend, conscientize your mind 101. So you conscientize your mind, so conscientization will be like 101. It'll be like breathing air. It'll be second nature. I am out. Peace.